Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and day 11 of our 13 days of Halloween series here at Polly's Paper Studios. If you want to check out the first 10 projects, you can find links at the top of the description so you can get caught up. And for today, we're going to be making this very fun spiral bound mini album with the Steampunk Spells collection. We have all kinds of fun fold out pages, so there's going to be plenty of room for finishing this mini album. And we've also included some inserts in tuck spots as well as photo mats for some of those very special photos that you want to include. And each page has a fun combination of those pattern pages for a similar but different look all throughout the book. Now, I do want to say my apologies very quickly in advance, because if you hear noise in the background, that would be the tech hubby deciding that the best time to run the tractor would be when I'm filming. So we're just going to roll with it because life isn't perfect. And so if you want to make an album just like this one, then stick with me and we will make it together. I'm working with the Graphic 45 Steampunk Spells collection for today's project, and this was released when I was on their design team. It is now currently available as a collector's edition, so this is a linkable collection, and I am working with the 12x12 as well as the 8x8 paper pad. The pages for this mini album we're creating today are really quite easy to put together, and you will have options as to how you bind them once you have all of these assembled. The first piece I have is 65 pound weight. It's 6 inches high by 11 inches wide. I scored it at 4.5 and then also at 5.5, and I put some tape here on that center section, and I'll just adhere that right on over. So now we're going to have this portion that folds, and here is where we will punch to add our binding. The next piece I have is 6 inches high by 9 1/8 inch wide. It's scored at 4.5 and also 4 5/8. I'm going to use my 2 glue combo for this because this is going to be a bendy part. So just add a small line of that all the way around. And then bring these two pieces together, this corner to this corner right at the edge of that score line. Keep everything nice and even across the bottom, and it will line up perfectly. So basically what we're going to have now is 2 flaps that become the page, and this side has a small spine on it to allow for the bulk of the papers that we're going to be adding. So it will open this way and then also this way. I wanted to include a suggestion about finishing the area where you're going to add your punches. I'm just going to finish this now before I put it through the binding system so that I can have pattern paper that goes into the spiral area. For this piece, it will be 5 7/8 inch high by 7/8 inch wide, and it will be centered into that scored area. And I would just adhere that with a double-sided adhesive. And then I would do the same for the back side, because that page will show when you flip it over. So your options now are, if you would like to use a spiral binding system as I have, then you would punch those now, because you don't want to add a lot of layers to these pages and then try and work it down into the machine. Or you could add rings, and I would say probably 3 would be perfect. Just find the center and then half of each of what is remaining, and that will be a good placement for your rings. You can also add some trim to your rings if you want to further decorate your mini album. So you're going to need 4 of these for the project I'm sharing today, because I have a 1 inch spiral. I didn't want to add too many layers. So if you had a larger spiral, you could probably add 1 or 2 more, and then that would be a very nice chunky thick book. As it is, with all the paper layering. 4 of them does seem to be quite a nice thickness. So here is the book that I'm going to be finishing today. I completed all of my inside pages with that same steps that I just shared. An additional element that I wanted to add was a cover for the front and back, and that is just because I have my flip page here. I wanted to have a full page on the front to share all of the layering bits that I like to add when I finish it. And so I have the back finished with that same piece as well. This is 6 inches high by 11 inches wide. I taped that closed, and then I added that same pattern of paper to the side. And this is going to be the front and the back cover. And so this has a fold. My score line here is on the outside so that I get a nice finished edge. I decided to use the same pattern for all of my strips here as I'm working along, just because I wanted to have a consistent element throughout, and this stripe seemed to work really well with the additional paper patterns in that collection. So I knew I could assemble the base and then work on each of the pages instead of having to make every decision before anything was adhered. I want to start finishing the inside of this mini with this particular page because I am going to add one of the cut apart images as a tuck spot. So I'm going to add a tag or an insert behind this, and so I want to include this using some Tombow. This will give me time to let this set up while I work with the other layers. So this is just going to be a very thin line on 2 sides only, the outside and the bottom. I'm going to line that up right against the corner so that I can utilize the border that we're going to have for the pattern paper page. So once this is in place, I'm going to cover it with my stamping block, and that will hold it in place while the glue sets up. And then I can work along with the remaining pages on the inside. For all of the pages, including the front and the back, the measurement for the pattern paper is 5 7/8 by 4 3/8, because remember we have our strip along all this side. So we're just filling in the remaining amount of space. And I want to utilize the same pattern for these 3 pages that show along with this. I'm just going to center that, and I'll get that nice black border all the way around and continue to add my patterns as I work along. So you do not have to match these. This would be a good opportunity to use up some of the papers from your stash. I just like to have mine coordinate, so I chose to cut the same pattern for all of these surfaces. So these are all covered on the inside now, and then this flap, which will be under the front cover of this set of pages. I've got a pattern cut for this side as well. I just wanted to add an additional pattern for that would match on the outside. So here is the pattern for here. Now that I have the glue set up on the page with the tuck spot, I'm going to add that to the right hand side, which will be the top of the flap. And then I'll include this insert. This is where I switch back and forth between the 12 by 12 and the 8 by 8 paper pad, just so that I could have a little bit of a different scale. The insert measurements for cardstock is 5 high by 3 3/4 wide. The pattern paper is 4 7/8 by 3 5/8, and I arrived at that measurement just because I wanted to utilize the offcuts I was creating from the 8 by 8 paper pad so that I didn't add more to my stash, and that will just tuck right into that image on the bottom corner, and then you can add some additional pictures and memories to that section. I want to also include a small photo mat for this side. This is totally optional, and if you do decide to have a photo mat, you don't need to have a scalloped edge die, but I recommend that you include that white border just to keep some of those patterns looking too busy. So I just added another bit of the offcut to a black border and then to that white die cut rectangle, and this becomes a nice photo mat for this side. I also think a doily die would look perfect if you had another pattern with a border, and that would be a place for a special photo to go. So here's how our page layouts work. We've got our tuck spot in the front with an insert, and then it will fold open and then open again. And so you're going to have all kinds of room in here to finish this. I think this would be a very cool October daily or a documenting October. You have a lot of pages to fill. And so I have worked all through this book. I just alternated the patterns with the scale so that I could come up with different but similar arrangements. So each one has its tag and a photo mat, and then each one has 2 of these flaps that will open, so we got a nice wide amount of space to finish. This has a very retro vibe with that blue and the moon pattern, so I think that was a fun addition for these pages. And then here's where you can see the scale changes from the 8x8 to the 12x12. Last set of pages is the same. We've got our tag here and then 2 flaps that open. And then the very last page is just 2 pages without flaps because I did want to add that back cover. And so I just chose that beautiful floral with the gears on it, and it still has that fun stripe. So let's close this up, finishing all the way around so that it looks nice when it's all closed up. So now we can work on the cover. So we're back to that beautiful floral, and I'm just going to add this to cover the whole background with the beautiful border of the black cardstock. And then I'm going to add 1 layering pattern just because it was created as offcut and I wanted to use it up, and I like how this kind of helps to break up that floral. I wanted to use this owl that was one of the images on the cut aparts as my focal image, and that inspired me to pull an oval die cut rather than a doily shaped die cut. And I have this set from Gina Marie Designs, and so I cut my background for this layering portion with just more of that black cardstock, and I'm going to add it pretty well offset just to make room for my flowers. I don't have a die that coordinates with the exact shape of the oval from this die cut, but I did have one that was pretty close. So my plan is to cut another layering pattern with that die and then pop that up on a spacer. And then I'm going to offset this just enough so that it looks like this fits perfectly. And then we can disguise this side with our flower arrangement so it will look like I had the right size, but really we'll all know that we're just making do with what we have. Here's where the border will look like it fits, and then I'll add my image to the center. I like how that same background is in that layering pattern as well as the image, but you can see that scale is so much larger. I fussy cut that out with a small border all the way around just to give it more of an impression of an ephemera piece. And so here's our flowers. I added some of those Luna flowers from Prima, as I did in the previous video, by removing the center portion and then also the jewel portion that was on top to remove the bulk. And here is some of my netting and a loopy twine bow. I cut an additional layer of foliage for this with that beautiful glitter cardstock just to bring a little bit of extra detail, and then my die cut foliage is cut from black so that it coordinates, and then my bow here is a beautiful plaid from Really Reasonable Ribbon. And you can see when I add this now, it's just going to cover where our die cut doesn't fit exactly perfectly. So I'm going to add that, very carefully making sure not to cover those words, and I've adhered that with some hot glue so it is well secured. And I've got a couple of additional details. You know, I like to add a perfectly matching charm. So I've got a large owl here, and I want to position that so that it just kind of overlaps the edge of our die cut frame. Putting that on with hot glue. Take off the excess string and cover it with a button. I brought down a couple of choices here for sequins, and it is apparent to me right away that that black sequin is going to get lost on this very kind of graphic circular background. So next I'm going to decide between a brighter orange or one that's a little bit more vintagey, and I think because of the more vintagey palette of this Graphic 45 collection that I should go with this one. And these are also just a little bit larger, and so they're not going to be lost as much on that circular background. So let's go ahead and add those with our Tombow. And for the question of the day, would you rather have a s'more made around a campfire or an apple cider donut with apple cider after a corn maze? I'm definitely going to pick the apple cider donut because we have always done that with our kids. That is a nice tradition. So let me know what is your pick in the comments below. And that's all for day 11, our spiral bind mini album created with the Steampunk Spells collection from Graphic 45. If you enjoyed this project, make sure you come back tomorrow for day 12. And you can find links in the description for the products I used today, as well as for our social media sites. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day. And I thank you so much for watching. Bye.